Hello and welcome to this presentation. My name's Amy Northcutt, the Application Specialist for the Engineering segment here at Trimble. Today I'll be showing an overview of the new Beam End Symbols extension, which can be used to create custom beam representations on drawings based on UDAs applied to the beam ends in the model. This is similar to the previous moment symbol macro you might have used, but it's much more flexible and more robust. With the Beam End Symbols tool, you can define multiple symbols you'd like to be displayed on the ends of the beams based on the specific UDA that you've given in the model. I'll go through all of this in more depth momentarily, but let's first start with installation. You can see that I'm on the Tekla warehouse now, and I've just searched for Beam End Symbols. So this is where I can download the Beam End Symbols extension. It's currently available for version 2016i and later, so obviously including version 2017 as well. So here I'll just click download 64-bit. I do have to be logged into the Tekla Structures warehouse here, so you can see my name up in the top right corner indicating that I am logged in. And then there's also another tool called the Uda List, which I'll be using during this demonstration. The Uda List will enable us to quickly create some custom UDAs so that we can populate our beam end symbols based on those UDAs really easily. So go ahead and search for the Uda list on the warehouse and download the appropriate version for this as well. In this case, I'm looking for 2016i right down here at the bottom. Okay, now that I've got those files downloaded, I actually want to come in and I'm going to have to move just one file from the Tekla Structure System folder over to my model folder. And so first I'm going to find the file that I'm going to move. So I'm going to come to my C drive and go to Tekla Structures. There is a chance that you've got your Tekla Structures installation installed underneath the program files. That is the Microsoft recommended location. At Tekla here, we recommend you actually install Tekla Structures directly on your C drive. So hopefully you can go to your C drive, Tekla Structures, the version that you're using. In my case, this is 2016i. Then the Environments folder, US Imperial for me because I'm in the US and I'm using Imperial. This could be something different for you. And then inside the System folder. Now here I'm going to scroll down just a bit to beamendSymbolOptions.xml. And that's the file that I'm just going to right click and say copy and copy over to my model folder for the project I want to use this for. So I'm going to then go into my Tekla Structures model. This is the project that I'd like to utilize this tool on, and I'm going to say open model folder. So now I've got my model folder open, and within that model folder there's an attributes folder. So I'm just going to double click on my attributes folder and then hit Control V or right click and say paste on my keyboard, and in this case it looks like I've already got one there, and I'm going to replace the file in that destination. I'll come back and I'll edit this XML file a little bit later, but for the moment we can leave that as is. Now I'm going to create these UDAs that I'm going to use to populate the symbols on my drawings. And so in order to do this, I'm actually going to create a new UDA that's not available in my INP file. It is worth noting that you can create these new UDAs by editing your INP file. Using the Uda list here is just a bit of a faster way to go about this, and so that's why we're going to use this method for this demonstration today. So in order to create a new UDA using the Uda list, I need to select the member that I'm creating. Now that I've got that member selected, within the Uda list, I can hit the plus button, which says Add New Attribute, to create a new UDA for this beam. And I'm going to select New UDA here and click Next. From here, I'm going to type the name, and so this is going to be the syntax. Because I've got two ends of my beam, the start and the end, which may have different types of connections, I want to be sure to specify which is the start and which is the end. So this is going to be the start connection, and then I'm going to give that a label of start end connection. And then the type of UDA needs to be a number or integer type. Without going into this in too much detail, the number type allows you to have a drop-down menu for this UDA so that you can only select certain types, you can only select predefined values for this UDA rather than just being able to input anything, which is crucial for this functionality. I'm going to leave all the other fields as is, and then within this third page, I'm able to specify the values that would populate that drop-down menu. So I'm going to create 3 new strings here, the first of which I'm just going to delete the values because I want that to I want the blank option to be available. It's possible that these beams or any of the members on this sheet may not need any symbol or any special UDA here. Then the second I'm going to use is going to be a moment connection, and the third is going to be a slip critical connection. So I'm just going to abbreviate that as SC. I'll click Next here, and then I get to specify the default value. And so you can see here this is a preview of what my UDA dropdown will look like once it gets created. I'm going to specify this as a moment connection in this case and say Add. Okay, I need to do that again for the end connection, so I'll do that now. Now I've created both the start and end connection UDA for this beam in particular. You can see that on the start I've said that this has got a moment connection, and on the end I don't have anything populated here. Now perhaps I want to copy this to more than one beam. I can do this using the UDA list extension over here on the right hand side. So in order to copy these UDAs to different beams, I need to select them in the list. So you can see I held down Control or Shift in this case to select multiple UDAs in this list, and then I will just hit the Copy UDA Values button at the top of the UDA list, and then I'll select the member that I want to copy those to. And so once I've hit Copy, I can then select the new member that I want to copy those values to, and then click the Paste button. And you can see that those populate here in my UDA list. I can carry on doing that for the rest of the beams. So if I want to select, these 3 beams along my grid lines and then click Paste, I can populate those start and end connection values for each of those beams. Now I can carry on doing this even if I want to change the values. As long as I copy and paste these UDAs, I can then change them after the fact. So in this case, perhaps I don't need a moment connection right here at the start. I would prefer a slip critical connection, and then I do need a moment connection there at the end. And so I can make those changes just by using the drop down menu here in the UDA list, and those will be automatically applied to my member without the need to click modify or anything of that nature. So I can go on doing that for a couple other beams here. And then from there, I'm just going to save my model. The next step here is going to be to decide which symbols I want to populate for the various UDAs that I've created. So I'm going to come into the drawing, and then I'm going to double click on the symbol icon here in my ribbon. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at the engineering section of my symbols and see if there's anything there that I can use that's already existing. I can create my own custom symbols using the symbol editor, but if there's something already existing, why would I want to recreate the wheel? So in my engineering symbols, I see quickly that there's something that I would like to use for the moment symbol. I could either use the filled in triangle here or the triangle with a slight line. And then for the slip critical connection, I'm just going to use a single circle. And so in order to determine which values or which numbers, I'm just going to select each of those. So I can see that the moment connection is 68 of the engineering symbol list, and then the circle that I'm going to use is 144 of the engineering symbol list. So I'm just going to make a note of that here on a sheet of paper. Now that I have all of the information that I know I want to put into my beam end symbols option XML, I'm going to open that up and actually edit that file so that we can just turn on that representation once we get back into the Tekla model. It is important that while you're editing this beam end symbol options XML, that you're not in the Tekla structures model, or alternatively, you can be in the Tekla structures model, but in order for any of these changes to take place, you're going to need to close Tekla structures and then restart and reopen that model. So for the sake of simplicity, I am not inside Tekla structures at the moment, and I'm just opening up my beam end symbol options XML. And I did open this using Notepad++. This is a freeware software that I like to use for text editing as well as XML editing. You can see that it's automatically colorizing the various fields, so it's a lot easier for me to know which fields or which text parts I'm able to change. So here we go. The first field is the start connection UDA name, and so I've populated the UDA syntax that I created earlier in that UDA list. So the start connection UDA name is just start connection with an X at the end, and then the end connection is end connection with an X at the end as well. And then the symbol file, if you remember, that I created, or the symbol file that I'm going to be referencing, I should say, is the engineering symbol file. And then I've listed 2 comma 68, comma 177. No spaces in that string. And so 2 corresponds to the empty, the no, basically no special connection field that I had there in the UDAs. 68 corresponds to the moment connection, and then 177, I had previously considered using 144, but changed my mind at the last minute there to 177. It's just a slightly larger circle circle symbol. And then, so I've got that string for the symbols, and then the angle offset is the next field, so that just determines which direction that symbol is going to show up. And so I have these set to 180 so that my moment connection arrows are pointing the correct direction. And then the width and height is just the width and height of that symbol on your beam representation. You can play with those a little bit if you're interested. This is 3.175 inches, and then that is scaled down. So it's 1:1 in this file, and then that gets scaled down in your Tekla structures view. The slant can be how you want to rotate that about the beam end, and then the X and Y offset is the physical direction or physical location along the beam. This is relative to the beam axis that the symbol is going to show up. And then the symbol color, right now it's gray, and so that's just 1, but you can cycle through the various colors. Those match the Tekla structures drawing colors here, and there's a little bit more information about this whole file on that original beam end symbols TUA article that I was showing at the very beginning. So if you'd like additional information, further information regarding all these fields, that can be found here in this TUA article. The very last step in this process is to then come back into our Tekla structures model and open up the drawing where you'd like to use this beam end symbols tool. So I'm just going to open up a pretty basic framing plan that I've created based on these beams. And once I have this opened up, I can zoom in, and I'm going to use a selection filter so that I can only select the beams, because I need to edit the representation for all of the beams at one time. So I'm using Control G to grab my selection filter tool. I'm loading in a selection filter that I've created just to allow me to select only the beams in this view. Let me turn my selection switch so that I can only select parts here, because I don't believe I included that in my selection filter. Then if I zoom in, you can see I'm not selecting that column. I really just want to edit the representation of my beams themselves. Now, when I open up my drawing part properties now, you can see I've got a 4th tab that you don't typically have. This is called the Custom Presentation tab. And if I click the drop-down menu here, the second option is Beam End Symbols. So I'm going to use that, and I'm going to click Modify here in my drawing. And that's going to take just a moment to load all that information in from my beam end symbols XML. And then I can zoom in and I can see that my beam end symbols are applied to my beams, to the ends of my beams here in my drawing. Now it does look like I need to make some adjustments to how far those symbols are away from the end of the beam itself. And I can do that within that beam end symbols XML because these are running into my columns. So I can spread those out a bit. That's not a problem, just by increasing the X offset value. But you can see that where I've applied the different symbols, the slip critical connection and the moment connection, those are both applied dynamically, right? So I've got a slip critical connection here on the end of this bottom beam, and I've got a moment connection on the start of this top beam. So that's perfect. And then I'm going to close out this drawing. I'll make that edit to the beam end symbols XML to increase the offset. I'm also going to make some changes to those end symbols, and then we'll come back and I'll show you how those have changed. All right, I've gone through and I've made those changes both to the XML file as well as changed the UDAs on a couple of these. So now that I zoom in, you can see that since I've updated and restarted Tekla structures, my moment symbols have been appropriately pulled away from my column. And then I've also changed this field or this UDA to a moment connection rather than a slip critical connection. You can see that reflected here in the symbols. Thanks for taking the time to watch. I hope that this tool will help you be more efficient and effective when creating engineering drawings out of Tekla structures.